Let's give a warm welcome to our broker of record, Lisa Hodge.
I'm happy to be here, guys. Okay, today we're covering deals in distress. Right now, we know the market is in transition from what has been a seller's market for some time, switching to a buyer's market. So it's really all about who has the leverage or who thinks they have the leverage. So we'll be covering that and giving you some points and tips on how to overcome some of that. We do have lunch. If you just stepped in, if you'd like to get a sandwich or something to eat, feel free to grab something to eat. I don't mind you eating during class. I would like this class to be very interactive. I want you to leave with some insight. If you have a question, if you have something that will help the group with an experience, feel free to just chime in. Most of you attend my broker compliance, and you know how I run the broker compliance, providing insight, feeding off of one another. I don't like to just lecture or do a big monologue to myself. So like I was mentioning, feel free to grab some lunch. We have a wonderful lunch sponsor here. It is Anthony Nunez from Home Warranty of America.
I'd like to thank Ron and Lisa for having me today. Thank you very much. It's great to see all of you. A lot of familiar faces. I've been coming here for a lot of years. This is my 25th year in the greater Sacramento real estate market. Started out in 2002 as a loan officer. I still have my loan officer NMLS still active. You might have known me also from the inspection world, doing business development for them. And now I'm with Home Warranty of America. So I've got some brochures with me today, some business cards. Just a real quick question, what is important to you about the home warranty that you refer to your clients? What do you look for? What makes one warranty company different than another in your mind? Is it the person? Is it the product? Is it the price? Or a little bit of everything?
Well, I would say the product.
The product.
So what's covered
Absolutely.
in the home warranty? You get a home warranty, and then your client calls you a couple months after closing, and you say, absolutely, here's my home warranty. And they say, okay, it's not covered in the home warranty.
Yeah.
So I would say the product is personally the most important for me.
Well, we keep it very simple at HWA. We have two plans. We have a gold plan and we have a platinum plan. Our gold plan is $350 for the year. Our platinum plan is $490 for the year, and that includes air conditioning as well, HVAC. And with HWA, a year is actually 13 months. So when you get a one-year plan from us, it's actually covering 13 months. We do have other add-ons that might be important to your customer depending on the situation, like a pool and spa, outdoor kitchen, ADU, kitchen refrigerator, washer, dryer. Those are all things you can have. On average, I'd say most people spend between $550 and $635 on their home warranty, and that pretty much covers all their basic needs. So, real quick question, true or false? Pest control is included with
False.
false.
Well,
Pest control is included with an HWA home warranty. Whether you have gold plan or platinum plan, it's a one-time premium service on the property, up to $500 worth of service, and that's going to be for your little creepy crawly critters, spiders and such. So not the termites, not the mice or the rodents like that, but that is something. So there's a lot of little add-ons. I would encourage you to take a look. And so Home Warranty of America, just in case you haven't heard of them, they've been around for almost 30 years. So all we do is home warranty, so you won't find us in title or escrow or in the stock market or anything like that. So one other thing I wanted to mention that Ron asked me to is I've got a real estate professional mixer coming up in 2 weeks. Wednesday the 29th at Wildwood in Sacramento. It's at the Pavilions. It's from 5 p.m. till 7:30 p.m. It's free. I have hosted appetizers, and if you've ever been to Wildwood, it's some amazing food. Go ahead, and I'll leave this flyer behind if you want to register. It's free. It just kind of gives me an idea. Last I looked, I had about 8 spots left, but I'm going to open up some more spots, and that's out of 200. So I'm going to have over 200 people at this event. And if you come up and say hi, and tell me that KW rocks, your first drink is on me.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you so
Thank you
much.
very much.
That was good to know that pest is included, so something new. Okay, all right, so back to the topic today, deals in distress. We're gonna be covering the three main forms that are included anytime your property and your deal kind of starts to go sideways. So I touched on it a little bit at the start. Right now, we're transitioning from what has been a seller's market to a buyer's market. And the most important thing to know about that is who has the leverage. When it's a seller's market, the seller has the leverage. They have the power because there's less properties and more buyers. And so more buyers are competing for that particular property. So you'll see multiple competing offers. You'll see waived contingencies. You know, in the 2000s to 2021, we saw no contingencies, waiving the appraisal contingency. It was very aggressive because the buyer would risk then not finding a property. And so it was either let me take what I can get, or I'm gonna be potentially outbid and outpriced and out of this market. So there's a scramble within the seller's market to really get into a property. We'll take whatever we can get, just get me into this property. So we saw a lot of that in the seller's market. There was very minimal request for repairs, if there was a request for repairs. And so there was no request for repairs, no contingencies, a very low cancellation rate. So cancellation rate in a seller's market, okay, I promise I won't bite if you want to sit in the front row. And I don't like spit or anything or call on anybody in the class. And so, so in a seller's market, the cancellation rate is extremely low. So a 3 to 5% cancellation rate. So very low cancellation rate, which means deals are going through, which means everyone's getting paid, which means everybody's happy. So everyone's feeling great, right? Buyer's market, which we're transitioning into now. So buyer's market is anywhere between 3 to 6 months of inventory. Right now, as of June 2026, Sacramento County is at 2.6 months of inventory, which means we are kind of transitioning into that balanced market. But what happens when it's a buyer's market, buyer has the leverage. Buyers add in contingencies. I don't know if you've noticed this, but the request for repair list, when I know it's going into a buyer's market, so I've been kind of through a few of these waves of transitions of market, when it goes into a buyer's market, your request for repairs will say, see attached addendum, right, Leslie? So you'll start seeing these lengthy requests for repairs because buyers are asking for more. Why? Because there's so many fish in the sea. When it's a buyer's market, there's more inventory than there are buyers, which means there's less competition, which means buyers can be more choosy. So buyers right now in this market, it's transitioning. So sellers still have the mindset of it's a seller's market, and buyers are like, it's a buyer's market. And so we have a lot of cancellations, requests for repairs, lots of these contentious escrows, where in seller's market, hot seller's market, we weren't having cancellations. We were having how do we come up with the difference to pay for the appraised value to get this to close, right? So that's what the market we're into now. We have an increased amount of cancellations. And so it's really important now to understand strategies and how to save the deal. You know, what do you do when you have a buyer and we have these extra contingencies? What do we do? And I want to give you guys and take away some insight and some tips on saving the deal and knowing the contract and knowing what you can and can't do and can or can't say. And then if we have time at the end, I've saved a little bit of room to go over, kind of switch gears. And I know Leslie and I talked about going over some risky conversations, what not to say. We have this open house contest coming up, and so give you some tips and just quick reminders to keep yourself out of trouble of what you can and can't say or should or shouldn't say. And so yeah, so we'll dive right in. So the first form we have here is the notice to buyer to the form. Now, this can be provided to buyer or seller if they are not contractually doing something that they said they're supposed to do in the contract, okay? So we're seeing this a lot with the buyer obtaining several inspections. So home inspection, roof inspection, pest inspection. And then they're taking some time now to review those inspections and sometimes getting subsequent inspections. And so we've got a home inspection and maybe one of the drains is slow leak. So the home inspector says, hey, I recommend getting a scope done or plumbing inspection done. And so there's added on inspections that come when the buyer's being very particular with the property in this market. And what happens that is takes a little bit more time. And so if you have 17 days and maybe you waited, 4 days to get those inspections ordered, and then you need subsequent inspections, time's ticking, and maybe we're on day 17 now, okay? So we've kind of run down the clock, and then the seller hits you with a notice to perform to remove contingencies, but you're still doing inspections. And so what do? What I highly recommend is do not wait to the 11th hour to get inspections done. If you get an offer accepted, order inspections that day. Do not delay. Time is of the essence in the contract. There's no reason to delay, right? If you're that busy, have an assistant or a TC to order those inspections, get them done quickly. That way you're not wasting your time or the seller's time if it's something that's not going to move forward. You want to know everything about the property up front as quickly as possible. So you can get that notice to perform if you're not performing, essentially. I had a transaction recently where I had the listing. The buyer's agent did delay on inspections because she's on vacation. I said, okay, can you get them done sooner? No. Okay, well, you have 17 days, right? So she sent a request for repairs, a long one, okay? A lengthy request for repairs, which you'd have to go through with my seller, and she sent an extension of time addendum. I sent a notice to perform. And she was very upset. She said, I've never in my 30 years, I've never received a notice to perform. I said, okay, it's not personal. However, I want my seller to reserve the right to cancel if we can't work through these repairs. They were very lengthy. So it's not personal. That's another thing, Michelle and I were talking a little bit before. It's not personal. So these are just contractual obligations to be met. So don't get too emotionally involved in the transaction. So it wasn't personal. I said, the seller just needs to reserve the right to cancel if need be. Because on a notice to perform, do you know how many days you have if you're given a notice to perform to perform?
2.
2. You have 2 days. The day it's given is day 0. So county day, oh, yes.
I have a question though.
Yes.
Let's back up. I want everybody
Okay.
to kind of make sure you said something I think that maybe we haven't heard before is
Okay,
you received a request for repairs
yes,
and you responded with a notice to perform.
correct.
Okay. That kind of go through the rationale of
Okay.
doing that.
And an extension of time addendum. So they sent a request for repairs. So we were close to the contingency date, right? We were within a couple days. So I think our contingency date was Friday. They sent an extension to Friday, and they sent a request for repairs and extension until Friday. So what I responded with was, yes, we'll review them. However, I sent a notice to perform because if Friday comes and we're still not in agreement, and then the weekend happens, and then now we're looking into next week, and we can't come to an agreement, now my seller has effectively wasted this much time. Now we're into next week. Now what I have to do is then send a notice to perform and then wait another 2 days. You see what I'm saying? So we have all of this time. And so, I said, in order to protect my seller's right to cancellation, because if we can't agree on these requests for repairs, then we wasted time. I want to be able to send a cancellation.
Is it basically dependent on request for repairs? I mean, if there.
Yes, it was
if there
long.
$2,000, oh.
It was long, it was repairs, and so it's like, okay, I need to go over with my seller, what is this gonna take to fix?
But if it's kind of basic, no
If
reason
it was
to
a $2,000 credit
do-
for this, no problem. However, it was lengthy. It was very
What was the
extensive.
funds? What was-
So one of the items, which was the main item, was there was a light post. We didn't know who owned it, so we were seeing if it was county, if it was, PG&E. They wanted it to be not tilting, right? It was a very odd request. So we said, okay, well, we have to do due diligence. We have to do research. We can't agree to this. We can't agree to this item if we have to perform some additional research based on your request.
Right.
And so that could take time. So we're just reserving the right to the seller, because if we waited, then I'd have to then start the clock over. So, it closed, we were all good, it closed, everyone's happy, buyer, seller, everything's good. But I will say, so that's, to flip it, okay? So that's the listing agent side of it. Now, if you're a buyer, some of the tips that I want to give you all, the contract, let me preface with this. All contracts are done in good faith, okay? So we don't want to use tactics that aren't done in good faith and honest dealing, okay? However, there are some ways that if we are down to crunch time and say example, so we have the buyer now. So now we're the buyer's agent. So we'll put our buyer's agent hat on. So we're not the mean listing agent anymore, right? We're buyer's agent. And we have appraisal done, and we have appraisal's good, okay? As is, no conditions. All inspections are completed. Property is great. However, the buyer's loan isn't fully approved yet. They're waiting on some conditions, which are not going to be satisfied by our contingency removal date, right? So we get gonna get hit with the notice to perform. So what I will say is you need to check to ensure that you've received all disclosures from the seller, from the listing agent, because that is one ethical loophole essentially we can use to buy a little bit of time. What I mean by that is if disclosures are provided and maybe they leave off a page of the SPQ, okay? You can go to the seller and say, hey, we need this disclosed. We didn't receive all of the disclosures. Once they send that disclosure, it restarts the time, because a buyer has 5 days to review disclosures. And so it is a somewhat loophole if we need to buy time, okay? I will preface by, again, good faith. So we don't want to hold out and say, well, they haven't sent this, I'm gonna wait, and then I'll hit them with this. Like, no. However, if we are down to the wire, we need to check all our boxes. Okay, go through with the TC. All right, did they send everything? Is it filled out correctly? What is here in order to get a little bit of time for our buyers, because deals are getting harder to close, like I said, and this is not abnormal to have to be able to buy a little bit of time if the listing agent is saying, nope, we're gonna cancel on you, because maybe, in going back to that first example that I gave, my sellers, when I was a listing agent, it was contingent on another house, right? So we didn't really have time. I wasn't being, mean. I have another deal on the line, so we gotta put another buyer in here if we can as soon as possible.
Question,
Yes,
is there a relationship to the time that is submitted to you? In other words, not waiting until 11 o'clock
Yes.
at night?
oh, you mean time of day?
Time of day.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, because you get it, you don't see it.
Yeah,
You know?
okay, so you have until midnight. So until midnight, that's the expiration time
Right.
on the days counting. And
Right.
so if somebody did want to remove the contingency, you have until midnight. So people think it's maybe 5 p.m. or daytime, it's actually midnight of that day. So you can send in and not be able to be canceled on the following day if they could send a cancellation at 1 a.m. because you didn't, perform by 12 a.m. the deadline. So that really doesn't happen. But it could, so that
Yeah,
is,
'cause
that's
I
in.
mean, I've seen an offer come in
Yeah.
at 11 o'clock at night. I'm like, what?
I'm like, wait a minute, I'm like, yes, I got an offer, okay. I'm like this, I'm like, yep, okay, perfect. When I send it to my seller and I schedule out my text for first thing in the morning, but that's just me. But we all work, obscure hours, so yeah. I will say texting at that late, no, email, fine. Okay, let me see here.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Because we dealt with this,
Yes, we
the last
did.
6 months.
Yes, we did.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the 5 days for the disclosure to the seller.
Yes.
Starts when it hits our inbox.
Correct. Thank you for pointing that out. Yes. So delivery is considered delivered to the agent. Okay? So if Leslie has the buyer, this is what happened with Luke Steele. So if Leslie has the buyer, she didn't have the buyer, but if Leslie has the buyer and I'm the listing agent and I amend a disclosure, and so I send Leslie the disclosure. Leslie has it. It is considered delivered. The buyer has effectively received knowledge of that because Leslie has it, okay? So, now, 10 days later, Leslie's TC gets all the documents, sends it over to Leslie's buyer, okay? So we're talking 10 days now. That 5 days has expired since the buyer has knowledge of it. They say, we didn't know. The buyer says, we didn't know about this seasonal stream that was in the back of the property. Because now we want to cancel because we got it 2 days ago. No, you got it 10 days ago because it was delivered to the agent. And so it really falls to the agent's responsibility to convey that information to their client, because if they have knowledge of it, then it's considered received.
Would delivery would have been equally effective if it had also been sent to the buyer at the same time?
Well,
Or sent to the agent?
You mean if the buyer's agent sent it to their buyer direct right then?
If the listing agent had simultaneously included the buyer in that email, you know how you.
Yes, so so our agency agreement, we work directly representing the seller, and then the buyer's agent, with their agency agreement, they're working on an agent behalf of the buyer. And so we won't send it directly to the buyer. The communication chain would go directly from agent to agent, and it's considered delivered. Yeah, and the reason for that delivery is we don't know when they meet, right? So you don't know, there's no way a court could determine when they met. And so it's considered delivered, and that your agent you've hired on your behalf has knowledge of that. So thank you for that. Okay, let's see. Okay, question. How long does the seller have to respond to a request for repairs?
Never.
Yes, you got it. So, it was a trick question. You don't have to. Sellers don't have to respond to a request for repairs. So, if they don't respond, that's a response. You know, they don't have to formally agree or disagree. It's not like a counteroffer or an amendment or an addendum where it needs multiple signatures. They don't have to agree. I will say that it's a courtesy and it's common practice that you negotiate or at least inform the buyer they won't be agreeing or they will be agreeing. However, there is no time frame on that, and there is an expiration date on the request for repairs that it just expires if nobody can agree. So there is, so keep that in mind too, that if you are, especially in this tight market, let your buyers know that there's 3 things that can happen when you send the request for repairs. They can say yes to all of them, they could say no to all of them, or they could say yes to some of them. And so I always like to say that to my buyers, that they could say yes, they could say no, they could say maybe. So not responding is effectively a no. Okay. I think, so any more questions on the notice to perform? Did you have a question? Okay. This is what the form looks like, the notice to perform here. You can send, if they haven't completed, so this is all contingencies, I have that marked, but if it's just the loan, and then it goes down here at the bottom, and it's pretty clear, if you do not remove the specified contingencies, or take the specified contractual actions indicated above within 2 days, the seller may cancel the agreement. All right, we're going to move on.
So the buyer has 2 days to respond
to perform.
to the request for.
To perform. Yeah, they have 2 days to perform. So if it's a loan contingency that they need removed, they have 2 days to remove that loan contingency.
Based on that, sending that.
Yes, based on that. We
Or if
have,
they need additional time, can they send an MOT?
yes, they can,
Then the buyer would say, send out a request for
yes.
extension.
Yes, they can send out the extension, and they could say yes, no, maybe, yes. Oh, let me share with you. So another scenario that can happen, this happened a couple weeks ago with an agent in our office. They had their loan, only had the loan contingency left in place. There was a condition that all they needed was this one condition to be satisfied before they could remove all contingencies. Now, it was a form from an employer, so it was going to be able to be satisfied, just wasn't there yet. So they didn't want to remove contingencies yet, right? Because what happens, what can happen if you remove contingencies and the loan falls apart?
They're on the line.
Yes, they could potentially lose their deposit. So their earnest money deposit, when they send the contingency removal, what that means is our deposit now can be non-refundable. And so if you haven't done all the investigations and have all your contingencies removed, the buyer could potentially lose their deposit. Now I say potentially, they probably will lose it, okay? But I say potentially because we're not supposed to indicate who gets the earnest money deposit. So by signing that off, they're saying that this could now be potentially non-refundable, okay? So if this scenario, so getting back to the scenario, we have the buyer, they're waiting on that one condition, everything else is great, she really wanted this property. So I said, look, if they want and then the seller was going to cancel, okay, had another backup offer that was actually better than this offer, they were gonna cancel. I said, look, if they want it, you can let the client know, and I also asked, how much is earnest money? $2,000, okay. Not nothing, right, but also, could you gamble with $2,000, right? You really want this property, you're probably going to lose it if you don't perform. Do you think you'll get it in a couple days? Yes. Okay, you can let the buyer know, here's what's gonna happen. If you don't remove contingencies, they're going to cancel on us and you will lose the house. You'll probably get your EMD back, you'll get your deposit back, but you won't get the house. Now, here's option number 2. You remove contingencies, even though you don't have loan approval. If you feel confident enough that you're able to get this last condition, that the lender is able to get you final approval, so you're removing it ahead of time, so it's a gamble. What do you want to do, A or B? You know, and they chose to go with A. They said, okay, well, I'll gamble that I know this condition can be met, it just can't be met right now, so let's just go ahead and do it. And so that's one way, that's something that can happen. Hey, we're waiting on something. I recommend it in that instance. What I would not recommend it is if there's something like an appraisal that's outstanding, if it's an appraisal condition, because we don't know. We could say, you know, they could lose a $5,000 deposit because if we waive the appraisal contingency and it appraises low, or there's, you know, a list, maybe it's FHA or even convention, if there's a bunch of items and it's not an as-is appraisal, that potentially they could lose their deposit because we've advised incorrectly. So in some instances, it's really going to depend and be determined on the buyer and the full situation, but in that case, I said, look, tell the client either remove their contingencies, take the risk, or take the risk of losing the house. Okay, any questions on that before moving on to demand to close escrow?
I mean, is it safe to just, in generalities, to say of a buyer, if you remove all your contingencies, you may have a chance of losing your,
Yes, yes.
especially
Yes.
before the final.
Yes, yeah, if you cancel, if you removed all your contingencies, and then you decide you don't want it anymore, then yes, yeah, the seller will probably try to fight for that deposit back because they've wasted time, it's been off the market, they haven't been able to market it to other potential clients, and so they are out, they have been damaged effectively because the buyer's breached contract, so yes. Okay, all right, demand to close escrow. Okay, so the demand to close escrow should be given no less than 3 days, okay? Or by the close of escrow date, which is at least 3 days after delivery of the demand to close escrow. Okay, so I'm gonna show you guys how not to do a demand to close escrow. Can anyone tell me why this is not a good or a valid?
It's kind of small.
Oh, since they covered.
Yeah, I can't
I'm
see
old.
anyways.
There you go.
Okay,
Yeah, there you go.
okay.
What's the buyer's name?
Buyer's name, 1A is not
Basic.
completed.
Okay. Buyer's name is not on there, okay? So they have it as, so they've delivered it, so the close of escrow date is the 7th. They put that it needs to close by the 8th, and they delivered it on the 8th. This is a real one, I really got this.
Oh.
This is real, this is not an agent sent this to me.
You didn't do that
No,
for training purposes?
no, this is for training, you know, I went to white out and black out no, they get what they get, right? I'm on jumping through hoops, they shouldn't have sent it, okay.
Vanguard Properties.
This is a real life one that they sent, so I said, no, this is not a valid, because it wasn't, and they even marked here, by 7/8, which is at least 3 days after delivery of demand to close escrow, and no later than the agreed upon close of escrow date. Okay, so and they gave it to us that day. It's incorrect. So, and they didn't put the buyer's name, so it's enough. This is not a valid demand to close escrow. So be sure when you're filling out all of the forms that you put the buyer's name correctly and you have all of the information filled out correctly. Okay, so we will switch back over here. Okay. Demand to close escrow, like I was saying, within 3 days, but no less than 3 days is specified in agreement after delivery of the demand, or by the close of escrow date, which is 3 days after the delivery demand to close escrow, but no earlier than agreed upon close of escrow date. Okay. So if you have been given if you have the buyer and you've been giving the notice to perform, and you haven't performed, and then this is kind of what comes next, the demand to close escrow, and then if buyer does not perform by then they can effectively send the cancellation and cancel. If the buyer has not removed contingencies, the earnest money deposit, if they will execute mutual cancellation instructions, the buyer can get the deposit back. If not, if they've removed contingencies but maybe failed to close, then the seller can request that the deposit be retained by the seller, okay? And we can't really advise on that because it's a practice of real estate law. We advise on who keeps the earnest money deposit.
Can you say it one more time?
What did I just say?
It's about, that's a matter of real estate law.
Yes, it's a matter of law advising who gets the earnest money. So do not say things like, you'll get your deposit back when we cancel. The seller messed up, you're gonna get your deposit back. We can't say that. You can say may. You can say potentially, possibly, this could happen. But it even says in the cancellation that we cannot advise, and it is a practice of law. And so you do not want to advise your clients and do an unauthorized practice of law by saying, you'll get your deposit, the seller breached this way. We can always advise, but we can't say as a matter of law who determined to get, and escrow can't either. So that's one of those other caveats. Escrow can't determine who that, if it goes that far, goes to mediation and then arbitration, and the fact finder will determine.
Obviously, my TC can say it.
Yes.
Don't have a
I'm like, yeah, TC cannot say that. You're like, my unlicensed TC can definitely say that.
Got a really good TC.
Just kidding, I'm teasing you. Okay, let's see, let's go over to I wanted to touch on seller non-performance. So it's one of those things that it's almost so clear that it's unclear. Seller does not have a way out of the contract unless the buyer doesn't perform. So they're signing a contract, they've agreed to sell it. That's it. Plain and simple. You sign a contract to buy something, that is it. I think agents might get confused because buyer does have a contingency, so yes, we've agreed, but we need to check out what we're purchasing. And so the contract will be valid once we say, yes, everything looks good. The seller can't cancel. So your seller can't get cold feet and say, you know what, we actually want to sell to, my neighbor said they'll pay me cash for the house, so we're gonna cancel on this buyer and take this better offer. That can't happen because they're already in contract. So the only way, so if the seller does breach, then you can send the demand to close escrow, you know, obviously all the other additional paperwork, but if the seller is refusing to sell, then you can send this demand to close escrow if the seller is failing to perform. I had it happen recently to me. The seller, we go into contract, it was a, so we go into contract, the person that was on the listing isn't, it was said, they signed as a trustee, okay, well, things aren't adding up, you send the trust documents, yes, they're coming forward, okay, great. Waiting on them, hey, because we had a 10-day contingency, okay, can I get an we're waiting on these documents, yep, no problem, get inspections done, still waiting, no disclosure. So I already had red flags going when the name that was on public record and the person that signed did not match up. So red flag number one, right? So my clients really wanted the property. So we did the inspection, we're waiting on, did we order the appraisal yet? I'm asking the agent, hey, what's going on? We need to verify title. It was a huge mess, but the seller didn't perform. It should have been a probate sale. The person, it was not in the trust, and the person that was on there was not the authorized signer. So it was a mess. And so, so we sent the demand to seller to perform. We sent every potential, every notice. And if you run into a scenario like that and you have the buyer, my question is, how bad do you want the property? If you want it bad enough, seller is in contract. They cannot breach the contract. There's different remedies for that. And I'll say this for your knowledge, don't give this information to your clients or pass along, but they can sue for a specific performance. They can say, I want this house, I want it bad, you contracted with me, you said you were gonna sell it to me, here's waiving all my contingencies, I can buy it, I'd have the lender draw docs, and guess what? They can make them sign it. It's a legal remedy called specific performance, and they can sign it, yes.
So I'm just trying to be clear. So the person who was selling the property was not on the trust, it was not an authorized signer. So legally, was it a real sale? Because that person wasn't able to sell it.
Potentially, yes.
Potentially, it's like, I'm gonna sell Ron's car.
Yeah.
I don't own it.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, and so my remedy too as an agent, right? So I can sue you.
Okay.
I can go to small claims and sue you, which I still might, if I have time. I don't have a lot of time, but it's kind of on my maybe to-do list, right? Because I've earned my commission, right? We went through the whole entire process, but most of the time it's not worth it, right? Most of the time you have to pick and choose your battles, like with the client. My discussion with the client is, how bad do you want this property?
I mean, even, let's put a little bit different scenario, that the seller finally just rethinks it, doesn't want to sell.
Yeah.
Wants to stay in that.
Too bad.
What happens then?
Here's some moving boxes and a notice to vacate. No, I'm just kidding. But no, if they're in contract with the buyer and they decide they don't want to move, they're breaching the contract.
That's what it is.
So like the situation, I'm kind of tagging along with.
Yeah.
You're selling the house to move across to another state because of another job or something like that, and then a job falls through before you close.
Yeah. You can. So there's the remedies for breach of contract. Again, this is don't pass this along to your client. This is kind of a side note, right? But there are legal remedies for that. So the buyer can sue for a specific performance, which rarely happens. But if it is a property and it is next door to, it's in a court, and I own 4 of the houses and that's number 5, right, in this court, and I want a compound and that is my goal, and that fifth one, we agree to sell, and I'm in contract and I'm the buyer, and they change their mind, guess what? I'm not taking a liquidated damages of, nope, I want the property. So I will fight to get the property because I have 4 and it's in a court and I need to complete my family totally making the scenario. But if it's a property that's worth that much to a buyer, that is a remedy, okay? The other one is liquidated damages. We have that built into the real estate contract, which is 3%. I don't want to get too much in the weeds of that, but there's other ways if the seller does breach the contract for the buyer to have remedies, okay?
Is there any, I guess, is there anything on the plus side for the seller?
No,
If the seller need, just for some reason or another, they
No.
just got them, once they sign, they sign.
correct. So they're agreeing, you know, so if they potentially, so they also look at the amount of damages done to the buyer. Okay, if they cancel right away, if the buyer tries to pursue other legal remedies, then the court's gonna look at what were the damages. Okay, did you put EMD? No. Right, there was no EMD. Did you do inspections? No. Was there extreme performance? Was there partial performance done on the contract? What was done on that contract? So earlier the better, right? But no, if you're in the contract and buyers packed up and they're moving in and the seller changes their mind, you know,
No, it's good.
yeah, it gets a little sticky when it gets into that kind of, you know, and then it's up to the court. Depending on the facts, it can go either way. But yeah, those are, they could have to pay, or they could be forced to sell the property.
Of course, that's barring that they don't have the sale contingent that the seller is buying another house.
Yeah,
That's a whole different.
That's
Yeah.
a whole other
Yeah.
situation.
yeah,
So, and then also to go back to what Dexter said earlier, in regards to, selling a home that's in a trust,
yes,
and it's being
yes,
sold by a power of attorney,
yes,
verifying that power of attorney in that trust
yes,
is
Power of attorney.
trustee,
trustee,
Trustee. yes,
trustee. Verify what, like, send it to the
Yes.
title company, they
Yes.
can review it?
yes.
Is that correct?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, and that's,
And then, isn't there a form that says that this is the signer?
yes.
Yeah.
So that was my first, the person on public record was a person.
Yeah.
The person who signed the contract was a trustee.
Yeah.
It was trustee of this trust. Okay, great. I don't see it anywhere unless you just moved it into the trust and it's not provide us documentation, right? There wasn't any documentation. It was in the trust. That property had been taken out of the trust. The person who owned it had passed away.
Oh.
So it should have been a probate sale,
Yeah.
not a sale.
I had a listing that the owner originally did pass away, but the trustee was the daughter, and it was written up, she was the trustee. So
Yeah.
it went smooth.
Yeah.
It was smooth.
Yeah, if you have it, then that's not probate. Probate's a whole other, and in California, it's a whole other beast, right? It's a whole different listing. It takes time, and so, that was the discussion I had with my buyer, is we could go through probate, but, so you could wait. However, and I don't want to get too much into the probate, but if there's other creditors that are in line in front of you, you could maybe not even get the house. So it's really not worth it at the end of the day. So, yeah, a lot of things, it gets tricky when there's trusts and probate and different types of ownerships. I would say the biggest thing is just verifying ownership right away. Who is the person that you pulled on public record, the person signing it? If not, and they don't match, okay, provide clarification, documentation, and
I've done a number of trusts that were really smooth.
yeah,
I've never done a probate. We were looking at possible adding.
Yeah. I have a-
Could be a year.
trust listing right now that we're dealing with, it's not.
Normally they're pretty.
Yeah, they're pretty, as long as they're done
Right.
correctly, but, all right, let's see, moving into cancellation of contract. Let me go back here real quick. Okay, we'll move over to cancellation of contract. Okay, so the easiest way the mutual cancellation, if you're negotiating buyer and seller and you just can't come to an agreement because the buyer wants the world, the seller also thinks their house is, worth more than what it is. If you can't agree, then just, it's a simple, clear, proposed mutual cancellation. And then the return of the earnest money deposit would go back to, the buyer. Okay. What I will say, this is the clause that I probably send out the most, is that if a seller, for some reason, decides, if we have a mutual cancellation, okay, buyer has not removed contingencies, buyer's completed all their investigations, and they've decided, this property is just not for me. I don't want to undertake the, there's pest work that needs to get done. I choose not to, okay? So they're well within their rights to do so. Okay, that's what this is for. That's what contingencies are for, to investigate the property, take a look. They decide they don't want it. If the seller decides that they want to keep that deposit or hold up the cancellation, which sellers do often, so there is this clause here that it says a party may be subject to civil penalty of up to $1,000 for refusal to sign such instructions if no good faith dispute exists as to who is entitled to the deposit. And then it puts a civil code here. And so sellers will sometimes try to do that. They will say, well, I'm going to wait. I had somebody, it was probably 6 months ago now, but the listing agent said that her buyer wants to exercise his 30 days to return the earnest money deposit. And I said, 30 days? Where's he getting 30 days from? Well, I did a quick Google search. How long, I just put it in like I was a consumer, how long can a buyer keep a deposit? And it popped at 30 days. That's incorrect, okay? It is incorrect. They cannot keep the deposit. They don't have time to decide. They're not allotted that time frame. If the buyer has done their inspections, they choose they don't want it, their mutual cancellation, there's no dispute over who gets the deposit back. There's no good faith dispute. Then it has to go back to the seller needs to sign, or they could get a penalty up to $1,000 for keeping the deposit because they're upset, they're mad, they feel like they have 30 days. They don't. There's not a 30-day period. It's within a reasonable time frame to get the cancellation.
That has to go back to the buyer.
What do you mean?
You meant.
Yes, the
buyer,
earnest,
I thought it
yes, the earnest money to go back to the
Right,
buyer. They performed inspections, it's going backwards to buyer. Yes.
No
Okay.
30 days.
So a question that I get often on the cancellation is, I get this on the listing side. So if you have a listing and buyer has not performed, you've sent the notice to perform and cancellation. If buyer is not signing that cancellation because maybe they don't want to cancel or they don't want it to be canceled, can you put the house back on the market to active? I get that quite a bit. And so the answer is yes, you can move it back to active. You can move your property back to active on MLS if the seller has done all their due diligence, buyer has not canceled. Now, what I will say, if you have the listing, just be very careful and you have to let another agent know we have cancellation out. It's not fully canceled just yet. We're waiting.
So what would that other agent do? I mean, would he put an offer in anyway with contingency? Or?
Yes.
Is there any indication that you can note on the MLS?
Yep.
For everyone
I
to notice?
always put it if there's something lingering out there.
What would that look like?
Noted MLS. Cancellations have been, mutual cancellations have been, cancellation instructions have been sent to buyer, awaiting signature.
No, I'll call you for the right proper verbiage.
Yeah. Okay, let's see what else on cancellations. I think that's it. Do we have questions on cancellations? Okay, we're doing pretty good on time. Okay.
I have a question, you might have talked about this, if a seller cancels on a buyer because of non-performance.
Yes.
And the buyer has gone MIA,
Okay,
which has happened.
yes,
Completely.
yes.
Buyer's agent as well.
Yeah.
And,
Don't you love that?
I made a video on it, but it drug on for over 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I had to go see the broker.
Yeah.
To get that done. The seller wanted to move on.
Yeah.
And so in that instance, I basically told them we should probably wait and
Yes,
see what happens, because if you try to put the house back on the market and sell it to somebody else, he comes back.
yes,
It
So you
comes out of, so I want you to talk to that, like, even though it's signed cancellation
Yes.
on one side
yes,
and the buyer's MIA,
yes.
that doesn't mean that that buyer still can't come back because they have not mutually agreed to that.
Correct, so I would definitely note before you go into, and that's what we were talking about, noted in MLS in detail, that there is a one half executed, right, one signature on the cancellation. However, so just be aware of that before going into contract. Now, I will say that if the buyer has not performed and somebody is just not signing that, by action and default, fact finder will determine that it is canceled. It just gets a little messy, so it's always better to just disclose and not go into contract and use discretion just depending on the circumstance. But I feel in that circumstance, they've waited, their non-performance would make the cancellation valid. So it's, okay, buyer's lack of performance, have you done anything else? No. Were you doing inspections? No. Were you moving forward? Did you get loan docs? No, no, no. Okay, so you got a cancellation, then you disappeared and you did nothing else? No, you've effectively, by action, canceled the contract, right? But just be careful though, because it
Could be a
gets,
time
They
frame.
did, they did all the inspections, they did everything,
yeah,
So,
and they just disappeared.
except the loan.
I've got a
So,
couple
Lisa,
guys, I
how
got a couple
does
Italians
escrow
from New York.
process and get the money?
Okay, I appreciate that.
They don't,
So that they can open a second escrow,
they don't,
so you couldn't really take another
No.
offer and go in contract.
no,
No.
No.
No, they said you had to go through
So
a different
I was just
escrow
confirming,
company.
because I was like, how
no.
does that work?
Escrow, it's still there.
Yeah,
Yeah, they
So that
still
money can
have,
sit there until they find the buyer to
Correct.
sign.
yes.
So how many days or time frame is there for you to?
Within a reasonable time.
What's the?
That, it's, okay, so
Okay.
months is not
There's
reasonable, what a reasonable person would, yeah, so it is within probably a week or so before,
At most, right?
yeah, before it starts, becoming unreasonable. So, yeah, months, unreasonable, so it's in a reasonable amount of time.
we got to almost the 2-week mark before,
Yeah.
before somebody popped up and said, the buyer's agent finally called me and said, I'll get it signed.
Yeah,
And what was the clause you were mentioning that, they were referring to, that they wanted to keep the EMD?
I think it's 2B, is that the one you're talking about?
Clause.
it might come back to me, I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Your question?
Yeah, so as far as like the EMD, the deposit back, so as a seller, if you do the notice to perform on the buyer
Uh-huh.
and they get that signed, are they the ones in charge of getting that deposit back? There's nothing that you as a seller's agent have to do on that?
So, I'm trying to follow and give a good scenario. So so you have the on the listing side, right? So the buyer doesn't perform, but they've removed contingencies, so their EMD could now be non-refundable. Is that what you're saying, how the seller can collect for that earnest money?
So this situation, it requests that, I don't know what happened there.
Okay.
So the buyer removed the inspection contingency.
Okay.
And, the appraisal was completed, but the loan part,
Okay.
there was just no communication, they weren't answering, the agent, the lender, like
Okay.
nobody was answering.
Okay.
So if I did a notice to perform, and then she finally reached back after that, and she signed it off, well, she didn't want to, but they
So
did
they
sign it
removed
off.
all contingencies?
They didn't remove all contingencies.
Okay.
They signed the notice to perform.
Okay, so you're saying it may have been, so they didn't remove did they remove contingencies or no?
No, not the loan one.
Okay, so they had their loan contingency left in place,
Yeah.
yes. So based on the contract, if they haven't removed all contingencies, that deposit, they're still retaining the deposit. So once they remove all contingencies, then they're saying this deposit could be potentially non-refundable. Yeah. So if they've left the loan contingency in, they're doing it for a reason, because they don't want to lose the money. So, okay, more questions. Did you have another question? No? Okay, all right, now we have a couple minutes left for some additional questions. Let's see, real quick before we get to the open house one, question for you guys. How many offers can a buyer write? How many offers can one buyer have out at the same time on properties?
As many as they qualify for.
Yeah.
You can buy it all right.
So at the same time, so you're writing it up, you're writing up the offers. Okay. It is one. The answer is only one.
Only one. Well, it's supposed to be just one. Yeah, it's quote unquote one, we all know
The
that.
offer is supposed
One,
to be
wink,
one.
wink.
So here is why. So if you have an offer is a clear and definite proposal to one party to another with the willingness to be bound. Okay, which means if the seller signs it, then your buyer is bound to the contract. Okay, so what I would do instead, because right now I bring that up because we're in the market where multiple offers are going out and buyers think, I like that one, I like that one,
Yeah.
I like that one, write them up and see what happens. Okay, so what I will say is this, if you have a buyer like that, on the first page of the RPA, there's an expiration date, okay? It expires this date at this time. Use that instead. So say, here's this offer I'm sending to, which one is your top pick, client? Client number one, boom, sending here. It expires tomorrow at 5 p.m., great. Okay, if we don't get a response, go to the next one, write it up. So use that tactic because your buyer could potentially have offers accepted on multiple properties. So use that instead of the writing up, 4 different offers at the same time, because I've seen a lot of that and got that question. How can we write up multiple offers on properties?
Is it possible that someone, if you have more than one offer out at a time, you get one accepted, you do a withdrawal the other?
That is a good thing to do, a good practice. So another common practice that agents don't always utilize is the withdrawal of the offer, withdrawing your offer, your purchase, and you can do it in writing. It doesn't have to be formal. You can do a formal withdrawal. It just has to be communicated in writing, okay? I had it recently. I got an offer on a property, wrote a seller counteroffer. They haven't responded. I got another offer in, okay? First offer, hey, I'm formally withdrawing my SCO1. I'll be sending a seller multiple counteroffer to you, because if I send out a seller multiple counter to buyer number 2 and buyer number 1 has a seller counteroffer, there is no exclusion. Seller multiple counter says, we're going to get back to you because we have multiple out. Seller counteroffer, if they accept it, I'm in contract. So here's my formal withdrawal of that offer. I'll be sending you a seller multiple counteroffer. Too bad, so sad, you didn't respond on time, now you're getting a multiple counter. So now it's, highest and best, and these are the terms. But that is a good way to do it. So be sure that you withdraw the offer, especially in a timely manner.
So to repeat that, withdraw the SCO. If you receive an offer and they haven't responded, you're gonna do an SMCO, withdraw the SCO, and then send out the SMCO.
Yes, correct.
That's
Yes.
really good information for everybody to know, that's why I wanted to repeat that.
Yeah, so withdraw, if you send it out, withdraw, and then resend the multiple counteroffer.
And as a buyer's agent, this just happened to me. I wrote 2. Be careful, because listing agents talk to each other. They were literally a couple blocks away.
Must have been Elk Grove.
No, actually, it was in Thomas. It was in Thomas.
Thomas.
And so we sent them both out, and we did do the expiration game. And one sent me an extension of time amendment to respond later.
Okay.
And then they both got accepted. We picked one, but now I'm in repair negotiations with this one, and they know that we wrote on the other one. So, not a great practice. Fail forward through your coach.
Yeah.
I lost leverage in my repair negotiations because of that tactic.
Yeah.
So we talk, listing agents talk, we all know each other.
It's a small real estate world
It
out there, people,
really is.
very small.
So what you're saying is one offer.
One offer.
You're
One
saying,
offer is great.
don't create any additional stress for yourself or
Yes.
your clients, write one at a time.
Yes.
Yes.
And
if
then when you get close to the expiration of the one offer,
Then write the
then
other.
write the second.
You can be aggressive with it too.
Yeah.
You can say, hey, and I've used this when I have a client, I used it not too long, I had a client like, I'm in an apartment, I have to move now, it was a military client, like, I gotta move now, I have a, like, let's go.
Time is urgent.
So, offer, over list price offer, great, short contingencies, short closing, full
Tomorrow
approval.
at 5 o'clock.
Now, or we're moving on. And I told the communications to the listing agent, hey, they're ready to go. Because we also didn't want them to wait the weekend and wait till Monday, because we all know what happened, so no, take it or leave it. If not, let's move on to the next property, and then let's go on to the next and whatever. But that's a tactic you can deploy instead of writing multiple out. Just let the listing agent know, hey, they like this one as well. That's funny that you said listing agents talk. So a buyer's agent accidentally sent me a text. I sent we were negotiating, and she said, hey, I'd like to get inspections ordered for Monday or whatever. I'm like, oh, are you in contract? Did you get another offer accepted? Because I had sent out negotiations. So yeah, and she didn't respond, but so I just, she's probably embarrassed. I would be embarrassed if I did that. I would probably say, oh, I'm so sorry, yes. But yeah, communication. Okay, so buyer's offers. Now let's switch gears real quick. It's 1 o'clock. I know we're gonna go over a little bit, if that's okay. All right, open house. Things not to say at open house. Anything you can write down on your Avid, you can say to open house, okay? So just anything visible, you can say, okay? Do not say things like, yes, we got a lowball offer, but seller is desperate because they're getting a divorce and they gotta move, so they'll take whatever. Don't give up the seller's position, okay? So do not let do not tell a buyer, write it up. I know that they're desperate. They're behind on their credit card, they need the cash. Just write it up. Let's close quick.
With the term, they're motivated, that's not good.
Yeah. My sellers are looking at all offers. Yeah, they're willing to look at all offers. That's what I would say, yes. And that means they're motivated, and I am too. Let's get this sold, right? Let's do it quick. So you can, anything, and regarding the property, the neighborhood, just use your, your fair housing training, your ethics training, and anything in an Avid is what you can say. You can't say things like, yeah, there's, they've mentioned there's some leaking in the roof, but we don't know, right? Like, just use discretion. Buyers will try to get information.
Mm-hmm.
I, as the buyer's agent, if there's an open house, I will try to get information. And so I know, because I want to, do you have any offers? What are they? What they come in? Can you tell me?
This is really good for newer agents especially, because
Yes.
they will know you're new,
Yes.
and they're going to take advantage of it.
Yes. So
And I'm gonna ask all those sneaky questions.
I'm like, what's going on with the seller? I'm like, hey,
Thank you.
I'm like,
Why are they selling?
what's going on? Right? Like,
Because they wanna sell that.
any offers? Do you have much activity? Like, what's going, so you will get the questions asked. So just have a script ready. Be prepared when you go into that open house, which is a good, and I'm sure Leslie's gone over this as well, probably in detail, but it's good to practice. What are the schools nearby? How's the neighborhood? So just have a script already planned out of what you can say, can't say, you want to say, you won't disclose, because you could potentially get an agent like me who will ask you all the questions and try and get information out, like how many offers, how many people, any interest, how soon are they looking to move? So, and those are all, tools to use to structure the offer. So, any questions? I know we are a little over on time, but any questions before we gotta get going? Okay, I know Leslie was like, let's just stump the broker. And I'm like, I get stumped every week. You guys call me
That's her job.
great. I get called with crazy questions. questions all week, like, I don't know, I've never heard of that one happening, let me get back to you, but, okay, well, thank you all so much.
Thank you, that was
I
so
have
good.
one thing. Can
Great.
you share with us the craziest thing that's come up in the last 30 days? If it's shareable,
Oh my gosh.
you have one.
Where do we start?
I know, that one that's really.
Wait, was it one I called you about?
Which one?
I know which one.
Oh,
The seller?
yeah, that one was interesting. Let me think.
I don't-
I think probably one of the craziest was the lady who, she didn't have authorization to sell the property. So it should have been probate, it wasn't, they were MIA, right? So I'm calling the broker, I'm like, where are they? I'm calling the TC, I'm hunting down, like every number, I'm on Facebook, I'm like hunting down because my buyers are like ready to go. And so I called every single person, and then, okay, so get this, so we do the cancellation, right? It's fine, it's canceled. She had sent a cancellation to me, and I said no. I sent another cancellation. Buyer, we wanted the money for the inspections back, because we already did inspections. They weren't canceling, they were MIA, but I knew I had a partially executed cancellation, so I could get the buyer's deposit back. I just didn't want to sign it, because they weren't agreeing to pay anything, right? And so I waited and didn't hear from anyone. Titles, like, we haven't heard from anybody, nobody's answering, can't get a hold of anybody. And so we were looking at other properties. When we put another offer in, we signed the cancellation and just moved on to another property. And then later, she waits until we're past our scheduled close of escrow date and sends a cancellation. And escrow's like, we already canceled this and put the deposit back. What do you
What do you want?
yeah, like why are you doing this? And then later on, she puts the house back on the market. I had already reported her, right? And so then I'm on MLS and I'm like, violation, this, and then I'm like texting her, I'm like, please do not do this to another family, because the poor, I talk all of these forms and legal and it's really those people, like this is someone's home. This is why it's important, because her daughter didn't want to go look at another house, because she's like, my heart is broken because I had a pool and she really wanted that house, and she's like, I can't have my heart broken again. And so really, that's what it comes down to, like, acting in good faith, time frames, because people's lives and kids, and then wanting to swim in a pool, that's really what we're dealing with. And so I violation on MLS and, did the reporting thing. I could go further, I just haven't had the time, or the rage recently. But once I get maybe a spare moment, then I'll hit that again. But she put it back on MLS, and then I texted her, I'm like, you do not have, this is a probate sale, you don't have a right to sell, what are you doing? And then she took it off right away. So, but yeah, that was crazy. It's crazy that people like that give our industry a bad name, because you're breaking hearts again. You're breaking that it's really that little 7-year-old girl who didn't get her pool, and her heart's broken. I'm like, I take that personal, I feel like that was, so, that was probably the craziest thing. Okay, thank you all so much. I hope it was helpful.